Welcome back to the Morning Energy Show, where we sit down with the leaders shaping the solar industry's future. Today's guest is Brett Bouchy, CEO of Forever, one of the largest residential solar companies in the nation. Known for his unapologetic approach and data-backed strategies, Brett is here to speak openly about the state of solar, from pricing pressures to installer challenges, and why servant leadership may be the most powerful tool in today's business landscape. And now, your host of the Morning Energy Show, Jake Hess.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Morning Energy Show. I am very excited to have Brett Bouchy on with us, owner and CEO of Forever. Brett, thank you for joining us. I know that you're extremely busy all the time.
Thank you very much for having me, Jake. It's an honor to be on the program.
All right. I have some hard questions for you throughout this podcast here. So you ready for them?
I wouldn't expect anything different from you.
All right. Well, I'm going to get to those in just a minute. We have quite a few of them, quite a few questions, I should say. But here's the first one for you. Your knowledge could have made you successful in many different industries. What made you passionate about solar? Why'd you pick this industry?
I really was impacted as I got older in my career that I just didn't feel, even though I'd had like success, like worldly success in the businesses that I've had, a lot of people know this, but I've invested in 28 different companies in 7 different industries over a 30-year business career.
I didn't know
that is something that I'm very, very proud of. But again, when you look at it, I just felt convicted. I became a Christian later in life. And as I got older, I just didn't feel that I did enough to glorify his kingdom. That led me down a road of really wanting to do something different and having a better work-life balance. So obviously, to own 28 companies in 7 different industries, I owned more than one at one time. At my peak, I owned 8 different companies. Some were minority stakes, some were majority stakes, some I was more active in, some I just served on the board. But the reality is I realized I needed to have a better work-life balance. So I started selling off these companies as I got older. It finally, in 2015, I got down to one company that I owned, and it was a 50-50 partnership with a couple of celebrities. And that was a really cool experience. I was able to be on a show called Fourth and Loud that aired on AMC Network. With that being said, I just didn't love being on TV, being recognized. And I just decided when the opportunity presented itself, I sold my 50% stake back to those celebrities. And for the first time in my career in March of 2015, I didn't own a company. At that point, I really was convicted, and I decided I want the rest of my legacy and my business career and my life to be focused on like glorifying God's kingdom, and I want to try to make societal change. I had made the decision to become a pastor, and I was looking at going to seminary and actually, becoming a pastor, which would have been a couple years in seminary, probably 48 years old. Back in 15, I was 46. Then a couple of crazy events happened. 2 of my very close business friends said they were getting into residential solar. Didn't really think about it, but I Googled residential solar one day, and all of a sudden I just went down this rabbit hole of just information. And the more I read about it, the more intriguing it was. And back then, Solar City was public. Sunrun was just going public. Sonova was in its embryonic kind of stage. And I started realizing like, this is really cool. Didn't really have material interest. In the tipping point for me is I ran across a documentary called An Inconvenient Truth, which is done by Al Gore. I'm a Republican through and through. And I went in very skeptical, but I watched that and I'm like, this is the greatest existential threat from my 5 boys. I have 5 kids and my grandkids at the time, which at the time I had none. Today I have 3. And I started realizing, hey, maybe I could use the business acumen that I've learned in my career to accelerate the rate of residential solar adoption, because it was very fragmented. Outside of Solar City, which had about 35% of the overall market, it was all small contractors. And they didn't have the standard operating procedures that I had built in my, career with 28 different companies, what I was kind of a system. I figured I could apply that as system in this industry. And where could you really make a positive impact on climate change? But most importantly, you can save people money. In the 28 companies that I had, this is like an incredible thing about our industry. None of my products save people money. You're trying to create a product, create value for that product, and get people to pay a premium for that. That's one of the reasons where I thought like, hey, I need to do something different. And in this industry, I could really make the societal impact that I really wanted to do to become a pastor. And so I shifted gears. After watching that documentary, I literally got on my knees, prayed about it. And the next day I said, I'm getting into residential solar. Went out then and talked to my wife about it. She was very excited. She wasn't excited about being a pastor's wife anyways. And I hired a consultant who was an executive at Sonova. Now remember, this is Sonova back in 2015. And he introduced me.
They were tiny, right?
Yeah. Yes. And that introduced me. I looked at a lot of contractors. The more I realized, and I looked at contractors because I realized I wanted to buy an EPC, is that the bigger they were, the more liabilities they had. So I chose a small contractor, partnered with a gentleman by the name of Greg Albright, who is today my minority partner. In 2015, Freedom was doing 6 installs a month when I invested in Freedom, and I bought a majority stake back then. And back then they were doing 1.7 million in revenue. So, and that's been my focus for the last 10 years. And what's crazy is that the longest I ever owned one company was like 3.5 years. And most of them, when you're in the investment banking industry, it's all about getting a return on investment. So the quicker you can turn your investment, the better internal rate of return you can get. So everything's about speed. And, you put money in, you exit as fast as you possibly can. And it's still that way today in private equity. So doing something for 10 years has been incredibly challenging, but it's just been an incredible blessing because I have a sense of fulfillment and freedom that I didn't have in the 28 previous companies, because what we are doing is just incredible on a daily basis.
Yeah, not just for the homeowners like you listed, but you also listed your kids and your grandkids, and leaving a strong legacy behind like that. After watching The Inconvenient Truth, I can understand why you would want to do that and get passionate about it. Thank you for sharing that. You did bring up a lot of things in there that I don't know how we just skirted past them. For example, who are these celebrities? Are you allowed to say?
Yeah. I mean, I've been partners with probably 8 NFL ownership groups: John Bon Jovi, Gene Simmons, Paul Stanley. So I've done a lot of cool stuff. And when I talk about having worldly success, that's what I mean. Like, just because you have success and you make money does not mean that your career and your business life is a success. And I felt convicted as I've gotten older that true wealth is not the richness in the material things you accumulate over your lifetime. It's the richness in the personal relationships that you have. And I've tried to bring that into Freedom. We talk about servant leadership so much here as leaders of Freedom, but when you come here, we are going to demand that you walk the walk. Everybody talks about servant leadership, but then when you have a conversation about like, hey, I want you to take less because I want you to serve your reps. All right. Everybody wants to be a servant leader, but if people willing to sacrifice and take less per project to actually walk the walk? And the answer is a lot of times is no, which is okay. But then Freedom is not for you. We want you to go somewhere else.
You want to be on the winning team. LeBron did it when he went to the Heat.
Yes. But a lot of times he had to take less to be able to do that. I know that sounds crazy because he was making $30 million a year, but he made sacrifices to get Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh there. He's done it with the Lakers. Like, if you had took his market value, he would be making hundreds of millions of dollars a year. but he doesn't do that. He makes it on the endorsements. It's all about winning for him. And that's what we want to do here at Freedom.
Oh my goodness. I love that. Hey, you brought up another thing. I just had a question because I consider myself an entrepreneur. I would love to have a business your size. I don't, but you said some cool things. You said you ran 8 businesses at a time. Just curious, what was the range of revenue pulled in between those businesses when you ran 8 at a time? Or what was the lowest and what was the highest? Do you know?
The companies were as small as 4 to 5 million of revenue, and the biggest was less than 100 million.
How did you manage 8 different companies at that magnitude at the same time and sell them? That's wild.
Yeah. So not well. All right. So the reason I say that is because what I did is I sacrificed personally to do that. And that's where the real change happened. And a lot of people grow up with Christianity like I did not. My parents were incredible parents, but we went to church maybe on Easter and maybe on Christmas. That was it. And so the focus was just on self when I was younger. So, and in my early 20s. And I had a lot of worldly success, but I didn't handle it very well. And, I regret those decisions because it affected my relationship with my 3 boys. I am divorced. The reason I am divorced is because I was focused too much on business and not enough on my first marriage. I've learned how to do it better the second time. And I'm glad to say I've been married almost 20 years to my beautiful wife, but I learned from a lot of mistakes. And so that's what it did, is that it cost me a lot personally. And a lot of times you can change and you can get better, but there's still consequences for your mistake and consequences for your sin that I still deal with this to this day with my 3 adult children from my previous marriage.
Oh my goodness. That's actually not quite a normal thing to go up and just open up about on a podcast, but I've been doing a few of these and I have to say that was very refreshing to hear, the self-awareness and the fact that you changed and you've been married. How long now? Over 20 years? How long was it?
Almost 20 years to my wife, Brandy, and we have a son, Micah, and I was blessed to have a stepson, Sale. So that makes up my 5 boys. And my 3 adult children from the previous marriage, the relationship has never been better. But, we went through some rocky years. And a lot of things is you become a Christian and you change. But that doesn't mean it erases the sin that you made and those consequences that you have to do. And you need to acknowledge that, hey, you made those mistakes and there's consequences. And it doesn't mean that God can't use you in the future. And a lot of people get so caught up in the shame around the mistakes that they've made. And, I can put my sin up against anyone. Like I can win every time because the stuff that I did in my early 20s was not great. And it doesn't mean that God can't utilize the rest of your life. And that is the amazing thing. And I want my story and my legacy in business not to be about all the previous worldly companies that maybe I did well financially. I want it to be about freedom. And that's why the last 10 years I've been so focused on building this.
I love that. Please tell me that's why the name is Freedom Forever.
100%. It's rooted in biblical philosophy. In my office, you see Galatians 5:13. My favorite scriptures in Matthew, you are the light of this world. And I have never been able to use that scripture in a business because I've never seen a business that is so shrouded in darkness. Everything is about deception in this industry. It's mind-boggling to me because we have such a tremendous opportunity. The unit economics, it's the greatest wealth creation opportunity of our lifetime if we don't squander it as an industry. And we deserve all of the negative publicity that we've gotten because we have squandered it. But we need as leaders to stand up and say no more and clean it up ourselves. All right. And if people do not want to clean up, they need to get the F out of the industry, and we need to expose them in the light and get them out of the industry.
That was impressive. The businesses that you ended up selling, you don't plan on selling this one though, right? You have that history, you have that knowledge. most people shoot for an exit. It sounds to me like you want to keep Freedom Forever alive and not sell it.
Yeah, I'm 56 years old, and my goal is to really truly make an impact. And I mean that. Like, the goal is to just keep building this, operate on a very skinny margin. We publicly talk about our margin. We want it to be about 8.5%. We've operated every year that we've been in business. We have been profitable. In 22, it was a very rough year. If you guys remember, cost of equipment rose. We got caught with the timelines, and we installed a lot of projects at a loss. A lot of finance companies did that in 2022, but we still eked out a profit, but we made less than 1% for that year. In 2024 was our best year. We did just under 1.6 billion in revenue, up from 1.7 million in revenue 9 years ago in 2015. And I'm very transparent. We made $138 million, which is just under 9%. And that was the best margin and the best year in Freedom's history from a net income standpoint.
My goodness, that is massive growth. That is the big leagues. Thank you for sharing that. Now, with all of that greatness and all the good things you've done, puts you in the spotlight for the entire industry to look at, speculate, make assumptions, create rumors. I'm hoping to debunk some of those here today with you. Would it be okay if I did that?
Yes.
Okay. So first one I have here is, it is rumored that my picture is hanging up in your office. Is that true? No, I'm just kidding, Brett. Here we go. Let's see. Rumors say that you dislike competition, but you've said that you need it to succeed. I've been in your office when you said that. Can you clarify your stance on this?
Yeah. I'm going to use a lot of biblical scriptures. Iron sharpens iron. All right. I want people to compete, and that pushes us to be better. What I don't like is people that compete and do it the wrong way. All right. Tear shaving, all the crazy stuff that happens, white page and all those types of things. That is not how you compete. But I want to be clear. We are trying to drive down the cost of residential solar. I talk a lot about this. All ties back into our mission to accelerate the rate of residential solar adoption in the United States. Why do people go solar? It's not because they want to be green. It's not because of the environmental aspect. It's because they want to save money. That is the driving reason why most people make the decision. The reason we operate in 36 states, and I want to be clear, we don't use subcontractors. We are installing, we have 57 branches. Every installation is done by a W-2 employees. The only time we do subcontracting is on roofing. Why that is important is that we're in states where it's really difficult to save people money. When you get into states that have electricity rates around 11 cents a kilowatt hour, 12 cents a kilowatt hour, we're the only ones who can do that because we operate at lower costs. And I've heard competitors say it's a race to the bottom. That's not the case. We need to embrace the fact that we are a commodity. All right. Like, if you sell modules, doesn't matter what modules you use. They're all pretty much the same. The only time you need a high wattage panel is when you have limited roof space. When you talk about inverters, the two best inverters in the market are SolarEdge and Enphase. If you're installing those, then that is on par with everyone else. The true quality is in the quality of the construction. And the reality that the sales industry doesn't understand, that quality doesn't come into play until years 6 through 25. There is no doubt in my mind that the best construction is at Freedom. Outside of that, the only one that's even in the stratosphere is Sunrun, right? We are the two best in class, but a sales rep doesn't care about that because everything's about selfishness, in my opinion, which is one of the problems. It's about here and now. It's about the speed of getting the commission, and that's not necessarily in the customer's best interest. What we need to be focused on is that if you're doing this right, why is the sales industry so transient? Why do people jump around from installer to installer? It makes no sense to me. If you're stable and you're looking at every single customer is going to become a repeat customer in the next 5 to 10 years. Why do I know that? It's because very few people have an electric cars. The future is the electrification of the home. The average consumption in the next 5 years of every customer in the US will double.
Wow.
That means if you're selling them a 9 kW, you're going to sell them another 9 kW, probably with a battery. The flaw in solar is it doesn't work at night, which is why you're going to need batteries on most installations 5 to 10 years from now. So when you look at it that way, and if you looked at every customer as a recurring customer, you approach it differently. Your focus is on serving the customer. And we don't want you to make less money at Freedom. We want you to sell to the customer lower at Freedom with the thought process that you're going to have to go and sit in front of that customer 5 years from now. And you want to look them straight in the face that you serve them. And if you do that, the amount of money that you can make long-term is crazy. But the mentality is about, I need to make as much money as possible. We use terms like, hey, I had a $10,000 rip on that customer. Like that's so negative. We need to focus on, hey, making a fair commission and think long term. Like you know you're going back to that customer and you don't think short term because everybody just thinks I'm going to make as much money off of that customer and then that's it. I'm never going back and seeing them again. That is the wrong way to look at this industry.
I will bet there are a lot of people that are listening to this that you just open their eyes, maybe not to the concept of it, but a different perspective of the way to look at it. Because even I was taught like these homeowners are going to make a decision with you one time in the next 25 years. I love that you just said you could transact in another 5 years. The equipment's going to double. Are they going to call you or are they going to call someone else? That's a beautiful perspective to have. In the beginning of that question, though, you did say that Freedom does want the lowest price point. And some say Freedom's low pricing is hurting the market and skewing redline expectations. What's your take on the impact of your price point?
Yeah, so it is skewing redline expectations because you can come over here and make the same commission and sell to the customer at 2 or 3 cents a kilowatt hour, like cheaper, and make the same commission. Also, our model is a rev share model, which incentivizes you to sell lower. If you sell high, you won't want to come to Freedom. That's the beautiful thing about, like, we talk about servant leadership and we walk the walk. Why would we create an incentive program for you to sell high? We literally have eliminated people. We actually have caps in each state on how high you can sell. If you are selling at 34 cents a kilowatt hour, all right, in California, you'll come here and sell at 24 cents. We don't want you, if you want to continue to come to Freedom and sell at 34 cents. That is not acceptable. And just because you're saving a customer money doesn't make it right. Right? The fact is, if a customer knows he can get it at 24 cents and you're charging them 34 cents, it's because it's opaque and they don't understand. And you are taking advantage of that customer. Stop it. Grow up and stop doing that. Those people are the people that need to exit the industry. And why it's hurting the market, it's not hurting the market. It's actually helping the market grow. If it wasn't for Freedom, we're about 10% of the overall market. All right. The market is going to contract in 25. If we weren't driving down the cost, it would contract even more if Freedom wasn't here. I am not going to apologize for that. I know it's polarizing. You either need to compete and figure out a way to be more efficient. All right. And that's up to you to compete to do that. The fact that we are pushing you to do that is a positive for the industry. It's not a negative. How that gets turned around is mind-boggling to me.
Oh my goodness. You make some solid points there. I mean, I don't own an install company myself, obviously. So it's easy for me to sit here and say that's a beautiful comment. And on the sales side of things, I would agree. I want the price point lower. They've done it in Australia. They've done it in Europe. May as well. It's probably going here anyway. And the fact that you guys are driving the competition, I see value in that. It just hurts in the interim for some of these other installers. I like that you say it's their responsibility, though. And there is someone pushing. There's always a leader in any sports or any industry that is pushing for a different way. We watch that in sales all the time. we don't think that, 10 accounts can be sold in a week, and then someone does 15, and all of a sudden that's the new metric. People are hitting 10 all over the board, right?
Yeah, one of my favorite lines is when you come to Freedom, we are going to force you to stretch your boundaries of thought of what you thought was possible. And just so you know, speaking of Europe, I'm talking to the second largest installer in Europe. I'm trying to figure out how they sell to the customer at $1.20. I want under dollar red lines or dollar baselines at Freedom. So I am like trying to rest on our laurels. I'm trying to figure out how can we cut out more, inefficiency that still plagues the industry. The amount of soft costs that we have with permitting, like it's crazy to me. And so I am trying to think outside of the box of how to get our costs down lower. How do we compete with Europe? How do we compete with Australia? I'm trying to learn from them, not the other way around. Like I am like in absolute humility, I'm going to try to take notes when I'm on the phone with that installer or Teams call to go, what can I do better here at Freedom to reduce our costs? Because what will that do? Accelerate the rate of residential solar adoption in the U.S., Freedom's core mission.
Wow. Okay. You are nailing these out of the park. Thank you. All right, Brett. So you mentioned that Freedom Forever wants the lowest price point that they could possibly get for consumers. And you also say that sales reps are charging an exorbitant amount on commissions. Do you cap your price point at Freedom Forever? And if you do all of the dealers underneath you that you've acquired, do they keep that promise?
Yes, there's a lot to unpack in that question. Number one is I don't think all reps are charging an exorbitant amount. All right. Mm-hmm. And at Freedom, you'll see commissions on a project very similar to what you see out in the field. But what you will see is they're selling to the customer at a rate that is significantly lower. So any finance company will tell you, we've worked with every finance company out there, I think with the exception of one. Everyone will say they almost come to us within the first 6 months and go, this must be a mistake. You're selling it 10 to 20% lower to the customer than anyone else. How are you doing that? We are doing that through efficiency and economies of scale. And we want to continue to drive that disparity. What that does for the finance companies, and they see this over a 2, a 3, a 5, a 10-year period, it turns into the higher you sell to the customer, the higher the default rate is, and the higher the percentage of compliance projects that turn into clawbacks. We are known for having the lowest default rate with every single finance company out there, not because we have higher credit quality customer. It just makes common sense. If you're selling to the customer and creating more savings, you're going to have less default rates. If you're pitching somebody and you're telling them and you're selling them at 34 cents with a 3.5% escalator, there's a chance that 5 years into it that they're underwater. That doesn't happen at Freedom. All right. So we have less compliance issues and lower default rates because it's all about the finance companies. We need to drive down the default rates because that affects their return on investment. And that's why our volume is coveted. And it's why the finance companies typically pay Freedom a lot more than they will most other contractors. So we have the savings from an economies of scale standpoint, but we also get a higher top line number because of our lower default rates.
Do you share those default rates? Do you post those anywhere? Do your reps get to see them? Is it a metric that you advertise to your company?
It's not. The finance companies have that. And I get that. I get those numbers for the finance companies, but we can't publicly talk about customers and what their default rate is because they have lending laws and everything like that they can't violate. You can substantiate that from every finance company. It's shocking. We sell on average about $6,000 lower on a average customer in 36 states than everyone else.
All right, so I'm going to head on to the next question. This is a bit more of a difficult one. There's talk of Freedom missing payroll multiple times. Can you address what's actually happening behind the scenes?
Yeah, it's so ridiculous. So we have tried. One of the things that Door to Door has done within our industry is they have the most complex pay structures, and everybody has a unique pay structure. So to truly be more efficient, We were going to the point that we had 20 something people that do commissions for our dealers. We had to figure out a way to automate that. It took us almost a year to build the automation with our software developers. The ultimate goal is to be the first company in the history of residential solar to pay every single day. That's where we are going. We automated everything several months ago.
To pay your sales teams, to pay your employees every day?
Not employees, sales teams. Okay. The goal is to go to daily pay. So we first had to automate the system and do it on a weekly basis. We did that 6 months ago. But over the past few weeks, we've been going and trying to get to twice a week, which again, we would be the first company to pay twice a week and then ultimately gets to daily pay. In doing that, we changed a lot of code. We made some mistakes. There was a couple of times where we were 1 day late on commissions. All right.
And everyone blew it up to be a big deal.
Correct. And it's
how many phone calls did you get?
Chad and Kylie got the most of them, but there's again people out there that magnify and weaponize it against you, and they just come up with false stuff that's out there. And I'm not going to dignify that with a response other than we're just going to continue to dominate. All right. Come and compete with us. Try to get your costs down. Sell lower. All right. Like if you're a leader out there, I promise you, you know what? If you take less and you pay more to your rep, you will make less money in the short term, but you will make more money in the long term. People will run through a brick wall. That's what a servant leader does. All right. Try not to tear down the other people that are out there. It doesn't matter whether you do it at Freedom or somewhere else. I can tell you right now, if one of those guys that are taking 50 cents a watt in the leadership stack, and they cut that to 15 cents, within 12 months, they would be making more money. But I guarantee you they would leapfrog everybody and they would be the number one producing region in that company outside of Freedom. That's all you have to do. We did a podcast in 2022 talking about disrupting the sales stack. It's doing what we did at Freedom on operations on the sales side. Everyone criticizes and everybody outside of door-to-door hates door-to-door. And they're like, how can we move away from door-to-door? How do we go to retail? How do we sell it with new homes? Door-to-door is here to stay. All right. We have embraced it. It's an incredible way to sell solar. It is very opaque and complex, but we need to build up and we need door-to-door salespeople to stop thinking as door-to-door, and you need to be a residential solar professional. You need to know everything about your craft, and you need to level up. And you know what? Compression of commissions might come. Don't be scared of that. Don't be nervous about that. Right now, we're still the average commission, even if Freedom is like $7,000, $8,000. That is crazy compared to other industries. That will come down. But you know what? In this model of Freedom, you're going to be selling 10x, 15x, 20x in 2 to 3 years as people understand. And a lot of people will say, hey, if you come in and a customer has multiple quotes, get out of there. Go somewhere else. That is so weak. Go in there and win. Be in a position to win. If you come in there and a customer has 3 quotes, you know they want to buy. All you have to do is win, and you got to be more efficient. And if you're here, you'll win every single time. And one company that was an installer shut down their installation about a year ago. And one of the reasons they came to us, and they're now a sales organization for us at Solar Pros, and they came to us, and I'm like, why did you guys do that? And he goes, you know what? We kept telling people in Florida, which is where they were based, if you run into a Freedom contract, you're wasting your time. Get out of that customer's house and move on to the next one. And we started talking about that open. And for 6 months, we're like, why is that the case? And the more that we learned about you guys, the more we realized we couldn't compete. So rather than do that, they decided to become a sales organization, shut down their installation company, which was very painful. And they now are doing more, like twice of what they did at the peak in 22 with us. because it's opened up 36 states and they're able to sell and win every job, which they couldn't do before that.
Understood. Freedom has been accused of over 9-month install timelines. Is there any truth to this, or are those claims exaggerated?
There's absolutely truth to this. All right. So I want to be clear. Freedom is known for installing every project. We're going to install on every roof type. We're going to install with a transformer. Sometimes it can take us 9 months to 12 months to get a transformer. We also have projects that are submitted without U-bills. All right. We allow that in our system, but it might go on hold for 6 months where the project gets delayed for 6 months. But do you not want to install that in 12 months? Some of my proudest projects are ones that get installed over 12 months because the project went into hold for months. Then we had to get a transformer. We overcame all of that. We had to do a crazy roof type. That's okay. A certain percentage of your projects are going to be over 9 months. That's crazy. But when you look at our overall timelines, we are undoubtedly the fastest national installer in the country that's compliant. I want to be clear. There's a lot of companies that install without permit that are much faster than us, especially in California. California has been a rough couple of years, all right? And there's a lot of people installing without permit. We won't do that at Freedom, all right? Unequivocally, we will never do that at Freedom. So therefore, those people are all going to be faster than us. And we're not going to apologize for that either. And if you're a sales rep and you are so weak because you sell high and you got to get it installed so fast before the customer cancels, again, go to those companies. That is an opportunity for you. That's not the place for you at Freedom.
All right, Brett. So this question I have kind of goes with what you just talked about there, but it's on the more positive side of the rumors. You mentioned California, and last year, I believe 80% of the companies went out of business in California and left a lot of orphaned accounts, projects that didn't get to be completed. And I heard that without Freedom Forever, California might have a larger problem on their hands with the solar industry. I heard that Freedom Forever is the one that came in and helped with a significant amount of those orphaned accounts. Is that true?
We'll do whatever it takes to help the finance companies that we work with. But ultimately, our focus is on Freedom's customers, never like that. But if somebody needs help, we will help them. So, and to me, the health of the industry is around the finance. Like, we need the finance companies to be successful. And a lot of people ask me, I get asked every time that I speak to a group of reps, why do we get into the finance side of the business? We have zero interest in doing that. We have zero interest in the next 10 years of doing that. There is tremendous risk with interest rates going up and down. And this is where reps don't understand this. And I all talk on one side, I say, I want to eliminate every inefficiency. And a lot of people see the margin on the finance side as being inefficient. Or a lot of people talk about dealer fees. All right. Mm-hmm. Like dealer fees, I could spend an hour talking about why dealer fees are great for our industry. And a lot of people think the opposite. So I don't want to go off on a tangent there. What I'm saying is that we'll help the finance partners that we work with get out of a jam if they need it, but we don't want to be doing that in the future. But the fact is, we have the largest service team in the country. We have 500 service techs. Within the 36 states we operate, 90% of the time, if we get a service call, I have a tech within 30 minutes of their house.
That's incredible. That's fast. That's huge. But you don't want to participate in too much of that, but you will help when's needed. And you need the financiers in this industry.
Correct. If they need help, we're going to help them. We need every one of them to be healthy.
Wow, that's pretty cool. So with these financiers, you once told me that if one of them goes out of business, it could be catastrophic for the industry, and other financiers might have a domino effect. Can you explain that to us so we can understand a little better?
Yes. I mean, it's really simple, all right? So the finance companies are middlemen, and I don't mean any disrespect to Mosaic and Goodleap and Sunrun and Sonova and Lightreach, all right? They are. There is about 12 to 15 companies that buy 90+% of the residential solar assets in the country. They are the market. Those are the people that we need to be happy. All right. The Blackstones, the Apollos, and then I can name all of them. They're the ones buying all of the assets. So it doesn't mean the finance companies still take risk and they're making margin, but they're essentially selling it to third parties. So it's very different. What does get me excited about the industry today is we have a company like NextEra that is interested. Now, everybody knows that Everbright came out guns a-blazing in 22 and 23. They're going to make a comeback. And when you look at the market capitalization, which is the value of NextEra, they are bigger than all of the other finance companies combined. So we need them. We need a healthy finance space. And we need the capital partners that buy all the residential solar assets to be healthy. And right now, like we've had SunPower go down.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people will talk about Sunlight. Sunlight went through a Chapter 11. It was the most orderly bankruptcy. SunPower was not orderly. It was bought essentially as a Chapter 7 from Complete Solaria. Now we have Sunnova that is a going concern, and we just saw recently John Berger step down. I am concerned about Sunnova, but we need them to be successful. We want them to be successful. We want everyone to be successful. 94% of Freedom's business is finance. Only 6% is cash. So that's really important. That's the stuff that keeps me awake at night.
You once showed me, I was in your office, and you once showed me that you keep track of all of these different KPIs within your organization, and you base so many decisions on those KPIs. It's like a GPS roadmap. And you once showed me data that a high price per watt sale hurts the company. When did you start showing up, or when did this start showing up, and what's the long-term impact?
Yeah, in 2018, I mean, it's just common sense. A lot of you guys like watched The Big Short in 2008 around the mortgage industry. What happened to the mortgage industry that was so catastrophic is default rates started going up. Because everything is leveraged, that's the one thing that can't happen. So I started realizing like the same thing cannot happen to residential solar. The quicker we can drive down the cost, the lower the default rates, the better the return is, and the more money will basically come into our industry. And remember, Freedom has a different issue than everyone else. I've got to come up with $2 billion of financiers for just our TPO products this year.
That's a little bit of responsibility.
Yes, it's a lot. It's a lot of money. I need the tax equity market to be healthy. All right. And I need there to be more players in the industry. And that's the thing that makes me the most nervous about the SunPowers, the Sunlights, and the Sunnovas. Like, we need everyone to be healthy. I do believe we are at the end of a downward cycle. So I am excited about that. But is today the bottom? No one knows the answer to that question. Will it go lower? Will we see more bankruptcies in our industry? Probably. All right. I just hope there isn't any more contagion on the finance side.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Let me clarify.
One thing I do want to mention is like
Sure.
The unit economics has never been better, right? For tax equity, they're getting domestic content. They're getting more energy communities. You're starting to see finance companies target and pay more for a project that has domestic content and energy communities. The unit economics has never been better for tax equity. That's why I think we are really going to have 2026 in the future. Residential solar is incredible. The ITC is not going away. I know that's another big topic of discussion.
On the chopping block, it is.
It is on the chopping block, but I will tell you right now, it is not going to happen. Most of the domestic manufacturing is done in red states. As an industry, we have been very, very strategic. And just this week, it came out that there's a significant amount of Republicans in the House that do not want the ITC repealed. The number was 21. My contacts in Washington believe it's a lot more than 21. But the margin is very thin in the House. It's only 4. So if you get 3 or 4 people that Republicans that don't want the ITC repealed, that's not going to happen. I think the chance of the ITC going away is very, very low. When you come to that conclusion, you cannot be any more bullish on our industry.
What about the IRA funding?
I don't think there's going to be any issues. You're seeing corrections right now in the market. Like, there's a lot of things that the new administration that is doing that is sending earthquakes through the industry, but it will stabilize. And if they continue to go down this direction where you're going to see the stock market go down, you're going to see us enter into a recession period, which is going to drive down interest rates. And then all of a sudden you're going to see what? Democrats regain control in the Senate and the House if it keeps going this direction. So I think you'll see the Republicans pumping the brakes around the Inflation Reduction Act and the ITC.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing that, because we have been stressing over here, a little sweat going down our forehead. It's not a fun industry. Those earthquakes you're talking about, they are affecting a lot of people, a lot of decisions to make, and it's making it very complicated to navigate the space right now. You seem to be doing it with one of the largest organizations there is. So you taking peace in the fact that this is going to be stable it gives us a lot of solace. So thank you for that. My question to you is, I went into your office and there was this price per watt chart that you showed. And you said if a price per watt is sold at, I can't remember the number, let's say $3.50. If it's sold above that, that's when we start to see lawsuits. That's when we see the bad activity, the cancellations more frequently. Do you remember that? Do you remember that price point we were talking about?
I do, and it's different for each state. So like in California, that would be okay. In Texas, that's not okay. All right, so 350 is a problem in Texas. It depends on the cost of electricity in that state. Then the other thing is you have to remember is the price per watt. If you have a battery on, it's naturally going to be a lot higher. And it doesn't mean that it's a bad deal because there's an additional cost of the battery. And what you're seeing is with the new rate plans, like what you've seen in like Illinois and California, we went from a small percentage of battery attachment. In Illinois, it was less than 1%. The new rate changes come in. Now it's 100%. In California, it was less than 5% at Freedom. Now we're 100% there. You're now seeing more adoption in Texas and Florida, even though it's not driven by lower rates. It's driven by climate change events like, extreme weather in Texas, hurricanes in Florida. Those states are just more sensitive to these crazy climate change weather events. So we're up to 40% storage at Freedom. 3 years ago, prior to net metering, we were under 5%. It's staggering the change.
Oh my goodness. You were able to scale the battery operations that quickly? I asked Ohm Analytics, what's the difference between all the people that went out of business and didn't? And they, there's different answers, but they said one of the main ones was the ability to adapt to batteries.
It is, but let me just tell you the number one reason. A lot of people blame it on batteries, a lot of it about rate changes. The number one reason installers go out of business is the transient nature of the sales industry. We have sales organizations that pitch and say the reason you should come here is that we use multiple installers. And as soon as one slows down their install times, we're just going to move the volume to another installer that's fast. Mm-hmm. We've talked to this one group, and every 3 months, he's got a new great installer. That is devastating to an installer. If you're doing that and you're a part of that, you need to run from that organization. And this is why. All right. So many companies have risk because they lose their sales volume. And as soon as that company gets inundated with volume, what are they doing? They're trying to scale as fast as they can to serve you as a sales organization. And then all of a sudden, as they're scaling, no more sales go in, they go somewhere else. The biggest risk you have as an installer that sales organizations don't have is general and administrative costs, W-2 employees. Mm-hmm. That is what puts most companies out of business. All the other things are ancillary negatives. The number one reason for the bankruptcy is that. this move to like using multiple installers, it has devastating consequences to everyone that's involved. And a lot of people will say, yeah, hey, it's great as a sales organization, make the installer compete. You need to believe and have faith in your installer and stick with them and help them improve and work them and be true partners. And that's what led us to a change and why we don't onboard new dealers. We literally haven't had a new dealer in 3 years. We focus on our 3 sales organizations that do over 90% of our business that we have true alignment on. We own 50% of 3 sales partners, Solar Pros, Vital, and Boundless. Why that's important is we've eliminated that risk. We have true alignment. They work exclusively with us. We don't have the attrition. It's why we just continue to grow even when the market has ups and downs. And that is a strategic benefit. And if you that's the one thing I would tell, find better alignment with your installer, even if it's not freedom. Believe in them. Don't jump around. You will never get a great long-term customer experience if you do that.
I'm glad you talked about that, because when I had my sales organization, I was one of those. I did jump around. I saw the timelines go up, and I want everyone listening, I agree with Brett on this. I saw the timelines go up and I thought, hey, that's not okay. I'm going to pull my volume and go to another installer. A month later, the volume went back down. They don't want to hire crews to complement my increased volume, because if it drops because I decide to go on vacation or it's the holidays, they have to fire those crews. I put people out of business and I regret it. I regret it very much. It doesn't help anybody. And to your point, Brett, I love what you said, that you need to find alignment with them and you need to help your installer succeed, because we both succeed that way.
Why is there this fight for margin? All right, where the sales organization and the installer are always fighting for margin. Be transparent. That's why I talk about our numbers. Everybody's like, why do you talk about your profit? That can be weaponized against you. I know people will listen to this podcast and say, Freedom made $138 million off of your hard work. They'll do that. That's okay. But when you think about it from a margin perspective and you have intelligence, it's 9%. That means we're making 27 cents a watt. And you can calculate what your commission is per watt. It's a lot more than that. Right? A lot of people are trying to take more of that. And the people that don't want you to investigate their numbers, they're the ones that want to operate in darkness. The people that want to be transparent are the people that want to operate in light. That's what we want to do. And so I have no problem with sharing our numbers. The year prior, we only made 5%. The year in 22, we only made 0.74%, less than 1%. And I'm probably prouder in that year because we didn't cancel projects for the first 6 months of the year. Equipment costs skyrocketed. We just lost money and we handled it and we made it back in the second quarter, but we barely eked out a profit. But that was painful. But you find your true character in times of adversity. All right. And people that were with us, remember how we operated in 22. Like the finance companies in 22 got crushed when interest rates were going up. A lot of them lost hundreds of millions of dollars and they survived and they still got there. All right. Good Leap and Mosaic, Dividend, they all had a rough 22, but yet they're still here and they persevered. And we love the partnerships we have with Mosaic and Goodleap. They've been great partners. Even when we didn't work with Goodleap for several years, we still maintained a relationship. Hayes flew down and met with me after we signed a long-term exclusive deal with Mosaic, and we had an incredible conversation. Those are the types of leaders we need within our industry. All right. It's been incredible working and standing up a TPO product with Hayes and Goodleap. It's been absolutely incredible to see how everyone has stepped up in the challenges that we've had in 22, 23, and 24.
I have seen a lot of businesses step up and take things onto their plate that they normally wouldn't have years before, just to heal the industry and make it a better place. I want to jump back a little bit to these installers and the sales rep relationship, though. I would say on the sales side, I've seen this all across the country. Installers don't want to educate the sales reps. They don't want to go and tell them why they don't want to hire more crews or why timelines are longer. There's really no educational platform out there for anyone to understand the nuances of why an installer does what they do. Sales reps are left to guess and wonder, protect their own, and hop. And simultaneously, to some of the things you're saying, the other installers weaponize that data against the sales organization to convince them, hey, if they're taking longer timelines, we have the fastest install time, switch over to us. But the moment their fast install timelines die, they've already trained us to pick up and leave. I would say the problem is almost just as much on the installer side, not educating, and the way that they weaponize those same metrics, the ones that they're complaining that we leave for, against us, and saying that it's the wrong thing to do.
And the irony, Jake, is the guys that have the longest timelines on install are the guys that give you the most unclean business. They submit projects that are not complete. And then they're the ones out there that complain the loudest. Like, that's what I'm talking about. Like, level up and be an incredible sales professional. Keep yourself accountable. Like, we have the metrics and we can show like where we are in every single market, and it's different. It's going to take longer to install in Massachusetts than it's going to take in Phoenix, because Phoenix is a solar app market. All right. And we are the largest user of solar app, and you get 20-minute permits where other times we have to wait 6 weeks for a permit. It's like you hurry up and wait. And those are the things that we have to deal with. And the harsh reality is that you can't live in fear. I know by going onto this show is that people will take sound bites of this and use this and manipulate and twist and deceive. That's okay. Like, you have to be willing to operate in the light. But I want to be clear. You can't have both light and darkness. All right. There is only one winner. And the more we expose our industry to the light, the faster we will grow and the more reps can make within this industry. We have to clean up this industry. You have to get rid of this negative connotation where, hey, I'm in solar, and you get people scoff at you. I literally was at a function at church, and I said that I saw somebody scoff, and it irritated me, but we deserve it as an industry. All right. So like, it's not a direct reflection of my character, but it is a direct reflection of our industry. And we have to stand up and lead from the front and say, we're doing it wrong. And part of that is calling out leaders that are taking too much. The leaders that are taking 50 cents a watt and 40 cents a watt, you know who you are. Like, we are coming after those people. And it doesn't matter if you've done it for years. All right. And this is where it's polarizing. It doesn't matter if you've done it for years. Change your ways now. Clean it up. You can't fix the mistakes that you've made in the past, but do it right going forward, and have faith that by doing the right thing and serving people, that you're going to make more money long term. But that is true faith, is believing in something you can't see, in taking a 70% hit on your overrides. Like, it blows people's minds. They can't do it. They don't have the faith and the belief to do it. And believe and have faith, and you will be rewarded 10 times over. And that's not why you should do it. You should do it because you're serving the people around you. And think about the people that are getting that 70%. As a leader, those are the people that are following you and believe in you. And you are trying to hide from them the real truth. And if you can't tell the rep what your real override is, you're doing it wrong. Stop it. It doesn't matter what you've done in the past. Repent from your mistake and move forward and do it the right way.
That's kind of been the basis of this entire conversation. You did that 32 years ago. You fixed up, you cleaned it now. 10 years into solar, you're doing it again. You're fixing some of the issues. And I do love that you wanted to be a preacher, and here you are today preaching some solar fire. Thank you, Brett. You already answered part of this question here. How is the ownership structure built at Freedom? You already mentioned it was Vital, Boundless, and Solar Pros. Is it true that dealers don't sign up with Freedom Forever, but can only attach themselves to your master dealers?
That is correct. We will never ever add another dealer. The only way, and they become sub dealers. And so, in part of our agreement, we have a shareholder agreement where we're a 50% owner. So, Solar Pros, Vital, and Boundless all operate autonomously. We're not involved in their day-to-day operations. But I have a shareholder agreement that says that their commission structure cannot change by more than 3% a year. Because why? I want to make sure there is alignment. And at the end of like 4.5 years, we will then do a stock swap where all of the leaders and people that can participate will own shares in Freedom. And the plan is not to go public. The plan is to stay private and distribute earnings to everyone. It's a very different plan. I don't want an exit. I don't want an exit for the sales reps or anything like that. But what it would be nice is to get a distribution check every single year without selling anything. You don't need to sell your company to have an exit.
Yeah, that's what everyone is racing to do in this industry is exit. They want to build the company to sell it, right? But you're the opposite. Even though you did it with all those 8 companies you ran at the same time, you wanted to sell those, you wanted to IPO, or most people do, and you're not wanting to do that with Freedom. And I think that's pretty incredible. That's a big change of mindset.
It is, and it goes to like the background, the thesis around trying to make societal change. But I also see like there's a competitor that we know of, and there's a rumor out there that they might get bought by Complete Solaria today. All right. And I want to be clear. That is the same. This is the 7th company. We first heard about like that they were going to be sold to Titan, to Lumio, to ADT, to Blue Raven, to Palmetto. And they just keep going down the line and they're chasing the exit as opposed to executing on their business strategy. Get back and execute or get the F out of this industry. Execute your business, drive down our costs, and compete. Iron sharpens iron. But we don't face enough iron in this industry, and that's what I'm trying to change. And if any installer like wants to call and pick my brain, people call me, and I have conversations. I will do whatever it can to share my business acumen with them. I want them to be successful, but I want them to do it the right way. If they're not willing to do it the right way, just get out of the way. Save us all a lot of trouble.
That's very kind of you. I'm going to share your cell phone number to everyone that's listening so they can call you for some business advice.
Yes.
No, I won't do that. But what advice would you give to an installer and a sales rep?
Have one singular focus. Everyone tries to do too many things at once. At Freedom, it's all about like a maniacal singular focus on operations. And even our entry into the sales industry is about what? Having a better operations. We need to have stable sales to have awesome operations. So even that entry into it was driven by the maniacal focus on operations. And everyone tries to do a lot of stuff and a lot of people get distracted, whether it's LED lighting or turf or whatever. Mm-hmm. Do one thing and be great at it. Like we're not a finance company, we're an operations company. And that is the one mistake that so many people make. And that applies to an installer and a rep. All right. Be great at what you do. You need to spend 30 minutes a day understanding the industry. Become a pro. Know everything about residential solar. You're not a door-to-door salesperson. The unit economics has never been better. It's harder to get paid right now by everyone. All right. Every finance company, it's getting more and more difficult and the payment cycles are coming later. We're going to have to adapt to that. But the key is the unit economics, all right, haven't changed. What we need to do for reps, they need to budget their money. I know this sounds crazy, all right, but like I try to teach all my kids, you need to have a monthly budget, all right? Like I'm not a Grant Cardone guy. I'm more of a Dave Ramsey guy, all right? Literally budget your money because the payments from your installer may come a little longer in today's environment. But the numbers shouldn't change. That's the key. The health of the business is about the unit economics. All right. And stick with your installer. If you have a good relationship and you trust them, stay with them, align with them, buy into each other, have a stronger relationship.
Brett, thank you so much for joining us today. I know you're super busy. I really appreciate it. You've taken extra time with us. We're going to love hearing this. Everyone's going to enjoy it.
All right. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Brett.